Welcome to episode 47 of the Camerosity Podcast, the world's one and only open source film photography podcast. My name is Mike Ekman, and we're back for another episode. 2 weeks ago, we went digital, and boy, was that fun. Before we go on to this week's topics, let's do some introductions. First up, from Sydney, Australia, the man who pays more for shipping than the cameras he buys is Mr. Theo Panagopoulos. Have you ever considered moving back to a country with more old cameras to buy, Theo?
I've considered it, but the family doesn't really consider that as a very good excuse to change countries and live somewhere else.
Next, from Gainesville, Florida, fresh back from a trip to Montreal, is Mr. Anthony Rue. Did you get your fill of poutine and Tim Hortons?
Skip the Tim Hortons, had some amazing poutine.
And finally, from Yellow Springs, Ohio, owner of Paul's Bits, Bobs, Lotions, and Potions eBay store is Dr. Paul Rebel. How has your supply of bits and bobs been lately?
The bits and bobs are flying off the shelves. Lotions and unguents are a little slow movers, though.
Yeah, I want to know what kind of lotion you have. All right. Well, like I said before, we did the digital episode 2 weeks ago. It was a ton of fun, as has been the case for the past couple episodes. We've been overwhelmed with the feedback from you guys. The numbers have been looking great. Record numbers of people tuning in. We really appreciate all the feedback we've been getting. This week, we're going to do something a little different. The theme for today's episode is cameras that have a strap. The idea being ones that are always in shooting order, that you're ready to take off at a moment's notice, your favorite cameras, whatnot. Before we start getting into that discussion, though, we have a few people in the waiting room. Let's let them in. All right. Hello, everybody. We have a full house once again. Lots of returning callers. I see one person that I don't believe has been on the show before. Alex Dietrich. Welcome back, Alex.
Great to be here.
Bill Smith. Good to see you, Bill.
Hey, how's it going?
Right. Patrick Casey, you're back again, too. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thank you.
Miles Lieback is in the house. Hey, Miles.
Hey, good to see you.
Hang on. What are you drinking, Miles?
I got a Willet Pot Still bourbon tonight.
Ooh.
Nice.
Fancy.
Very nice bourbons. Excellent. Mark Falk, you're welcome, Mark.
Hey, everyone.
And what looks like a new caller, Brian.
MacDonald. Good to see you.
Welcome. Where are you calling from, Brian?
I'm calling from Cork in Ireland.
Oh, excellent. All right. Exciting. We have an overseas caller. So middle of the night for you.
Yep.
Have I seen you've posted in the Facebook group a couple times, but have you been listening for a while?
Yeah, for quite a while. Yeah, a couple of years anyway.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank
Brian,
you.
are you in Cork City or Cork County?
I work in the city, but I live in Cork County.
I spent a lot of time in Kenmare,
All right, lovely part of the world.
just on the corner of Cork and Kerry.
That's about an hour away from me.
And just to ruin your little party, I've been to Dingle quite often, but probably the wrong county.
No, well, it's all right. Dingle is the ultimate tourist town.
Well, it is now, but when I first went there,
Does anybody want to kick it off?
I will. I got this is my wife's camera, and it's one that always has a strap on it, and one that she used extensively. Original Fuji 645. It was the GS, which is standard 75 millimeter 3.4 lens. And this camera, I think she bought it from our store, and I think it was 1985.
Did you get a discount?
She got it. Yeah. She got a very nice discount. And what's odd about it is the thing is still perfect. The shutter speeds are right on. That was 1 second. The rangefinder lines up. The bellows on these cameras are notorious for falling apart, and this one has just been great. So that's her camera, and it has the original Fuji strap on it. So it's ready to roll.
How do they compare to the more modern ones with the bull bar type thing at the front in terms of quality? Because I've only ever used that one.
Those were, they were just different. That's all. The usually the ones with the roll cages had a wider angle lens on them, but this one, because it folded flat, was much more transportable. And we were traveling a lot back then, so her two cameras that she traveled with was a Plabel Machina 67 and the Fuji. One was 6x7, one was 645, but those were her two shooter cameras.
What lens is on the 645?
That's a 65 millimeter, actually, the 75 millimeter 3.4.
Yeah, I've got the wider one. You're right. The ones with the roll cage do tend to be
Yeah.
wider. And
They were
I've got the
wider.
wide one. Yeah.
They had ones with 60 millimeter, and then there was the really wide ones, which were 45.
Yeah, I've got the 60.
I shot the autofocus, the GA645W, and I really liked it. Being able to fit that much space in the frame and still shoot medium format was pretty cool to me. I do kind of wish, though, Paul, I had a chance to shoot one of the older ones, so like the one you had there, because as nice as the GA models, A is the autofocus ones, in a weird way, it almost made it too much like a point and shoot camera. Like I don't know, it like sort of like took away part of the experience for me. Even though I love the images that I got from it, I just felt like I had just a point and shoot autofocus camera. I feel like I didn't appreciate it like I might have with the one you have there.
She actually had one of those, and she didn't like it at all for that same reason. It was too automatic.
Yeah, it's like too automatic, and I was like freaking out. That is the only roll film camera I've ever used that automatically loads film, and that was just weird.
It was DX coded as well.
Yeah, it uses it detects some kind of stripes.
Yeah.
That Fuji. Oh, I think only Fujifilm had it though. I don't think it worked
Kodak
with
didn't have it, just Fuji.
Yeah, it was.
The 680 has that as well, but I don't think you're going to be putting a strap on the 680.
No.
Is there a strap that works on the 617?
There is, and it comes with the strap. And I wasn't going to bring that up because I know it's a sore spot with Paul, but that is one of the cameras that is always going to have a strap on it.
No, you said that was your wife's though, Paul. What about you?
Well, mine is more modern. It's the Plabel 69W Pro Shift. I bought this from Von Cabbage. I bought it and I thought I wanted it, and then I thought I didn't want it, and then I shot a roll film through it, and I realized I really needed it. So it is now in the permanent collection. And when you talk about cameras that you put a strap on, to me, it isn't whether it's a camera that you really want to use. It's not a camera that you like it because it's a camera, but because of what it does. The fact that this one is a 6x9, which is my favorite format, and it's a 47 millimeter lens. So it's a wide angle on a big negative. So
With tilt and shift.
Well, and I'll probably never use the tilts and shifts. I mean, they're there if I ever wanted to, but that for what I do, it's more straight shooting. So I probably won't make any difference to me. But the fact that it's a really sharp wide angle lens on a big negative was the main reason for it.
You bring up a good point. I think the obvious thing people think of when they think of a camera that's always in ready position is something that is just an excellent camera, right? I mean, there's certain models of cameras that I think we all can agree on are better than others or more appealing. But you might even say, though, that you want to have a camera ready to go that does something that others can't, something that's unique, the shifts or a unique aspect ratio or something that maybe something doesn't always have. Because like for me, or anybody that has, let's just say more than 50 cameras, let's just say, there's so many cameras that have duplicate features. As great as the Nikon F3 is, there's so many other cameras that can shoot the same kinds of images or use the same kind of lenses or has the same list of features or something like that. But there aren't as many 6x17 cameras, or there aren't as many, square format 35 millimeter cameras or something along those lines too. So I think that for people with, medium to large collections, you may have the camera that's always like your go-to, like 35 millimeter, or your go-to 6x6 roll film camera. But then there's also going to be those that do something that's different or, can get you a type of image you can't otherwise get. I have one that can do something that not many cameras can get to, but I want to save it for a little bit later because you guys are going to just think I'm bragging. So I'll save that for later. Patrick, I'm gonna call out. Do you have a camera that's always at the ready?
All right. If you want to talk straps, I've got this M4, and this has one of the best straps I've seen in my life because no force is going to disconnect that from the camera. One of the best designs. I don't think this was. I think this was an aftermarket, but it is a a Leica or a Lights strap. So if you're just talking straps plus a camera I use a lot, that would be the M4. If you want to talk camera I use a lot, but there's no straps at all, this Minox 35GL, because it always was in my pocket. And it was always fascinating. You know, I know what you mean about too much automation. This, I think, has the perfect amount. It's got exposure automation, but it's manual focus. And it's a 35 millimeter lens. So that's, you know, so you, and it's aperture priority. You set the aperture, it chooses a shutter speed, and it's accurate enough for Kodachrome or Ektachrome these days. So this doesn't quite meet the test of strap, but this was a literal pocket camera. I mean, it's hard to find, you know, in the this is actually almost, well, it's not smaller than an iPhone, but so for straps, this guy, for camera I use all the time, this one.
Do you guys, or does anybody here have, I say this sometimes in my reviews, I call them like zoo cameras. And what I mean by that is the camera that, for those of us with kids, you know, we're going to take, where you just want to have a camera that you don't have to think a lot about. It's small, it's compact, it's easy to use, it's unobtrusive. You might keep it in the glove compartment of your car, or a bag maybe that you carry all around. Does everybody have a camera like that for when they still want to shoot pictures? Yeah, a couple people holding up some stuff.
Yeah, I've got the Nikon L35AF. I find that, yeah, I keep that in a bag. I'm not quite at the point where I can leave a camera in the glove box here. It gets too hot in Sydney, but it's ready to go. It's got the beautiful sonar lens on it. It's automatic. It autofocuses, and it just produces absolutely wonderful pictures. So that's probably my camera with a strap in terms of having just available for snapshots, family pictures, you know, if we went on a picnic, all those kind of things. And at the same time is a fantastic camera to carry around and through the streets and take pictures of various things, which are not family orientated as well.
So that's the first Nikon autofocus 35 millimeter, right? Yeah, you had mentioned the sonar. That was the only one that had that lens. Yeah. I think the replacement to that model, they went down to a Tessar style.
They did, which is why I specifically went for this one. One of the weak points of these cameras is and a lot of the cameras of that vintage compacts at least, is the battery compartment. Tends to be broken. This one seems to be okay, but once you get batteries in, it seems to sort of be a little bit, you know, unstable. So I usually put a bit of duct tape under there, just to hold it in place.
That camera,
don't break it off.
That camera has a nickname in Japan. They refer to it as the Pikaichi, top notch. It translates to top notch. So it was, you know, something I've learned in researching Nikon is they're one of those companies that rarely did anything first. In fact, if you look at the Nikon rangefinders, you look at the Nikon F SLR, even their more modern SLRs like the FE and FM, very rarely did they ever do anything first or even on time. They always waited, you know, they always observed. And you could, in a way, you could kind of say they're doing the same thing now with the digital mirrorless. It's like they don't get ahead of the game. They kind of wait and see what works, or they take their time with development. So when that camera, the L35 came out, it was as much quality as you could put in a fully automatic point and shoot 35 millimeter camera. So now prices on those are through the roof now. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It is. I was lucky I got mine before the curve started going upwards, but they are not cheap now, especially the sonar versions. People have cottoned on to those, and previously people were going for the more newer ones because, you know, why wouldn't you? But as soon as it started becoming obvious the sonar lens made a difference, the prices have flipped.
There are two versions of it too, Theo. The one that goes to, I believe, ASA 400, and the other one goes to 1,000.
Yeah, that was right around the time when that was the switch. Yeah, Kodak came out with, what was it, VR 1000 in like 84, maybe 85.
Yeah,
so I think that was the push.
The 1000.
1000.
Yeah, that's the later version.
Yeah.
Those sell for a premium even over the other one.
Oh, that's good to know.
If you want one of the earlier Nikon point and shoots, it doesn't have the 5-element sonar, but the One Touch AF3 was the third version of that camera. It's still very, very good. It still has an actual focus ring for attaching filters. It still has Nikon's excellent auto exposure system that they had in those cameras. I've shot that camera too and got wonderful results from it. Again, it's not the sonar, but I consider it kind of a good consolation for the early point and shoot, still with a relatively fast prime. To be honest with you, most from that era, the Japanese autofocus, prime lens, first generation cameras, Ricoh, Canon, Pentax, a lot of them were very good. They made really good images. The problem we're finding, though, is the electronics aren't holding up on some. The Nikons do seem to survive better than others. I don't know that anybody's done a real big study into like which models last longer, but you definitely have to be careful with those. I have the Pentax, I can't remember what it's called, PC35AF. It seems like every company used combinations of 35AF and some kind of letter or something in their name. But there you go. That's it. Gosh, Theo, it's almost like Theo and I are in the same room. I love that camera too.
It's a great camera.
And that always has a strap because usually people don't take it off. So
Brian, I saw you holding up a camera and maybe shaking it and listening to it. I hope that was a Minolta talker.
It's a Chinon Auto 3001.
Oh, okay.
And I got it accidentally. I was trying to buy an XA and the seller kindly told me that he just discovered some haze in the XA lens, and he started showing me lots of different other cameras he had, and I ended up buying this, even though it's much bigger than an XA. It's more like a brick, but it's got a 35 2.8 lens, and of all the cameras I now own, the results from this, they just always exceed my expectations every time I put a roll through it. And I'm mostly shooting HP5 in it, and the results are just incredible. So that's my Zoo camera, mainly because, speaking of straps, it came with a very long strap that goes through the battery compartment door, and it seems too long to put around your neck, and yeah, it's just too long to hold carefully. So I took it off and I just put on a generic wrist strap, because I've dropped it 3 times recently. That's why I was doing that, because I can hear it rack something loose, and I've glued on a couple of panels that came off very badly. You'd be horrified if you could see the glue coming into the LCD screen. But it's a fantastic camera. So it's the one I care less about, but the results are fantastic.
I'm trying to remember that one, Brian. That was autofocus?
Yes, it's got a really nice 80s front on it. You can see it says multi-focus.
Okay,
so
right.
You had some new technology that it sends out lots of different beams and can detect where the subject is. And it's got that really nice clamshell and the little finger thing there. But and it sounds, I tell people it sounds like a robot winking in a 1980s movie. That's what it sounds like when it takes a picture. So very 80s, but really capable.
That's very cool. I've never seen one before.
I've never seen one in person either, but when you held it up, it rang a bell, because I've seen one like in research before, and that came out around the time Chinon was building cameras for Kodak. And I believe there's a Kodak version of that camera too, where they were putting those huge flip up flashes on it. I don't have that exact one you do, but I reviewed a model a couple years back called the VR35 K14. There's also a K12 and a K10. Those are all Chinon cameras too that are very similar to the one that you just pointed out there. And I have the K14. I've shot it, and I absolutely agree with you. The images that it makes are really, really nice. I
can't believe the results I'm getting out of it. I'll post a selection of the HP5 shots in the group, so you can see them.
There's by my work, there's a public electric rail that goes into Chicago, a train station. And sometimes I would like to just kind of go up there and just take pictures of the train. But people sometimes look at you weird when you're on a train stand taking pictures of the train, not getting into it. But one time I had that camera with me and there was nobody on the train, but the doors were open. And I just stepped in, took a picture inside one of the passenger cars, completely empty. And this train car is poorly lit. It's got fluorescent bulb lighting across the whole thing. I didn't even spend any time composing my image. I just took a snapshot, whatever, forgot about it. And when I developed the roll from that camera, that one image just came out great. Like the metering was perfect, the focus was perfect, the colors were like this eerie green, blue, but somehow looked correct for the nasty fluorescent lighting it had. So I threw at it some pretty tough exposures, and it came out really nice. So Shinon, whether it's their SLRs, we've spoken on this show before about the Memotrons, the screw mounts. They went to the K mounts. Even their point and shoots are really good cameras, and people don't talk about them a lot. That Auto 3001 is really nice.
Chinon had some proprietary autofocus mechanisms that they actually sold them to other companies at some point. And it's been too long for me now to remember, but I remember when they first came out, that their cameras were way ahead of everyone else's autofocus capabilities, which is probably why that they were chosen to produce the Kodaks.
Yeah, because when Kodak America stopped making 35 millimeter cameras around, I think it was a Signet 80. They still had one or two Retina models made in Germany, and then after
like the Motormatic and stuff like that. Didn't those continue after the Signet went away?
No,
Oh, okay.
The Motormatics, the Automatic 35, when they stopped. Now I'm talking in America. Kodak Rochester Kodak cameras. They did continue making the Instamatic and the Pocket Instamatics for quite a while, but it appeared as, and Paul probably would know more about this than I do, but there was a time where it just seemed Kodak was completely out of the 35 millimeter camera game. They were all in on Instamatic, Pocket Instamatic. And then it was around like 85, 86 is when they had the VR film, and then they came out with the VR 35 cameras. And it's like Kodak is once again making cameras, but they were really rebadged Shinons.
Let's not forget the Chinon Bellamy, which was the sort of like the chest burster, sort of like the last iteration of the Voigtlander Vitessa.
Yeah,
where the barn doors swing open and the lens pops out. Stupid but fun and very capable.
Now, how dependable are those? Because I've actually kind of put out feelers for one, and a lot of them seem to be in inoperable condition.
Mine works perfectly fine. I've got the flash and everything for it.
Awesome.
I think mine
that's a cool camera
as well. Yeah, to check it.
Have you shot it at all though, Mark?
I had one roll I did like a couple of years ago. I couldn't tell you where the scans are at the moment, but it came out pretty well. I was surprised at the sharpness of the lens, considering, the construction doesn't seem the best on that camera. And I can see that the doors, if you were to like drop that, you will destroy those doors for certain. But the pictures were decent.
Is there two models of that? There's the one with the barn doors, but there's one with a single door as well.
They have an autofocus version. That's because
I've got that one.
The Bellamy is manual focus, right, Anthony? Yeah, and so the one without the barn doors is an autofocus one. I think it's even smaller.
Yeah, I've got that one. I might try and pull it out.
Yeah, I've never not been happy with images I've shot from a Shinon camera, which is weird because like prior to me getting into collecting, that was a brand I just never heard of before. I don't know if it's being in the US, they were so good at rebadging things that you just didn't hear the name much. But it's a shame though that they didn't do more, because they clearly knew how to make good stuff.
Well, in the U.S., they were a profit line for dealers, and they also were very, very strong in Super 8 movie cameras. They made actually more Super 8 movie cameras and projectors than they did still cameras. They had Super 8 sound cameras and very, very high end Super 8 sound projectors.
Okay,
so they were dominant. Elmo and Chinon were probably the two of the top Japanese movie camera producers.
I was looking up Shinon Auto 3001s on eBay, And yeah, there's a lot of them. The prices are all over the place, though. I don't think you mentioned it, but there's a button on the back that does spot metering. Did you say that?
No, I didn't. I didn't get into any more details, but yeah, there is,
Yeah.
and it's got. Well, I don't really use that, to be honest. I kind of use this as a point and shoot, so I kind of don't even think about that button. But there's a button on top which is to turn off the flash. So you just hold it when you're taking the picture, and the flash won't go off. And then there's another button which is fill-in flash, which is right next to it,
Oh.
which I use. I use both of those all the time, but I don't use the spot. It says, yeah, spot AF. That's what it says there.
So it's spot focus, not exposure.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't really tried that out much.
Yeah, that seems like something that's worth playing around with.
It is, yeah. No, it's fantastic, and yeah, I'll post pictures in the group so you can see it. The other camera I wanted to mention that I think is less of a zoo camera, more of the strap camera. I spent a few days going through a backlog of all the negatives I needed to file from the last year, and the camera that I seemed to put the most rolls through was the Pentax ME Super. But then I wanted to get a second K-mount body, and I wanted to get the MX, and I had to have a black one, of course, because
Yes.
the ME Super was chrome. So I ordered this on a Wednesday evening, and on the Thursday, my ME Super broke. So this is
It was
now
fate.
a stand-in for the ME Super because it's gone away for repairs.
When we had done our Pentax episode, we got into the K mounts. The MX was almost unanimously mentioned as a either all-time favorite or like runner-up favorite. That is a camera that a lot of people really, and I do too, which, you know, we've infamously got wrong about it not having what was it, the mirror lockup or something. I forgot we got wrong on it. But yeah, the MX, that's a hell of a camera.
Depth of field.
Depth of field. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think you'll continue to love it. I mean, it's mechanical. It's the equivalent to contemporary to the Nikon FM. You know, it's all mechanical. It just uses electronics for the metering, but it's bulletproof. Mine, I got at a local antique shop, ironically from a dealer that sold auto parts. You know, you go into those like antique shops where they have all the booths, and you know, a lot of time booths will have like a theme. Well, this one was like a whole bunch of like gas pumps and old tools and stuff like that. And there was this really, really worn, just beat to hell Pentax MX. But as we've spoken about many, many times, the cameras with the most wear almost always work great. And that's kind of how mine is. So mine's definitely a beater. But it works wonderfully. So I would be shocked, Brian, if that camera ever fails you like the ME Super did.
Well, the other thing is that black paint, because those were black paint, they're just a handsome camera. I mean, they really look like a really nice camera. Except you got a silver battery cover on it.
And since we're talking about black Pentaxes, I'll throw out my first one too. It doesn't have a strap at the moment, and I haven't had it long enough to really qualify, but this will be a future strap camera. I want to thank Paul for this beautiful LX. He picked up in a large lot, and I just knew I had to get it. So I had reviewed this camera once before on my site, but that one was a loaner, and it doesn't happen often. Usually when somebody loans me stuff, and I send it back, I don't always miss stuff, but this was one where it's like, I just liked the camera so much. Unfortunately, these do often develop a problem with the meter where the meter starts to go wonky. It has something to do either with the contacts just wearing out or something. This one has had no problems at all. I've shot 2 rolls of film already through it. Paul, works great. And a funny story is, Paul, when you got it, it had a whole bunch of like microscope accessories, right? With it?
Yes.
So whoever owned this before clearly was doing some kind of alternate work with it. And the LX has interchangeable focusing screens. And Paul had mentioned it has the grid screen. So there's no split image, there's no micro prism collar. And I've become so accustomed to that. I was like, well, I'm probably going to want to swap out that screen. But I made that comment before I actually shot the camera. And I've now put 2 rolls of film through this with just the grid, so picture the focusing screen. It just has a grid, but nothing else. And it's so bright. it is so easy to see focus on. I have the SMC Pentax 1.4 lens on it that I actually love the screen now. In a way, that'll actually be a reason to keep this camera in regular rotation because I have very, very poor vision, and the ability for me to see through a screen and be able to get my picture right, focus it correctly is a huge plus for me. So a combination of just the feel, the balance, the weight, the ergonomics, the quality of this camera, plus having that neat grid focusing screen will definitely keep this in the rotation for quite some time. So
Michael, you're talking about the screens, when the Japanese moved everything into split image focusing screens, it was a big sales point and everybody followed suit. Almost everyone had split image screens in their cameras. Pentax K1000 was one of the few that didn't have it, except on the special edition. On the SE model, they did put a split image on them, but most of them were a Fresnel screen with a micro prism. And it became really hard when someone bought a telephoto lens for those cameras, and all of a sudden half of the split image blacked out on them when they were trying to focus it. And it was very difficult to teach people to look straight into the center of the camera. If you focus your eye, reposition your eye when you're looking through the finder to look dead square into the center of the circle, the split image will clear up. But if it doesn't, then you're going to have one half of the split's going to be black, which is the advantage of the grid screen or the full screen.
Yeah. So if for whatever reason you have a preference for a specific type of focusing screen, at least, I mean, I don't know if that would be true to like a 60s or 70s SLR where the screens weren't quite as bright, but by the 80s, pretty much everybody's focusing screen was super bright. I mean, I'm holding it, I'm in my office now and I'm pointing the camera at my computer monitor, looking through the camera, looking through the camera and then out of the camera, it's almost the same brightness. They whatever voodoo they did on these screens to maximize brightness by that era allows those grid screens to just really, really shine.
Let's ask Miles what is, and I'm going to predict that Miles is going to say that his camera with a strap is a Contax.
Oh, very close, Paul. Very close. But I chose the MA, which I bought new from Dan Tamarkin, and a Sumar specifically for this prompt, which I did not buy new from Tamarkin. I think this is a set where I can pretty much set whatever controls and focus distance with the camera behind my back. So having that familiarity, I think makes it the go-to with the strap for me.
What made you go to the Sumar?
I have quite an affinity for uncoated optics. And I think the image is distinct, and really not reproducible outside of like coated lenses or, once lenses started being coated. And the Sumar specifically, I was able to find a nice copy, which unfortunately is quite rare. And
doesn't that have notoriously soft front element? So
yes,
90% of them these days really look like they've been through.
Yes, it is unfortunate. And same with the F2 sonar from the same era, used the same glass and suffers the same issues. But I looked out on this one. I bought it from Dan maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. But it's incredibly high resolving in the center of the image, and does as much swirly nonsense in the background at F2 as you would want. But if you stop it down to a working aperture, it's a very sharp image.
Have you adapted any of the Zeiss lenses to that camera?
Yeah, I have several Amadeo adapters.
Okay,
so I shoot sonars from 32 to like 56, both uncoated and coated. And that probably represents my largest like cohort of lenses that I use on both Contaxes and my Leica.
Miles, for those of us who aren't as familiar with all of the Leica M cameras, what's different about the MA compared to like the M3 or M4?
Yeah, the MA came out in I think 2014, and it's basically a like vanity adaptation of the MP, which came out I think around 2000 or so. But the MA has no meter in it, and the top script. This is very nerd, and the listeners can't see it, but the top script is the classic Leica script, whereas the whereas the MP has it just says Leica in a bigger script without the other stuff. It comes in silver and black chrome. It does not come in black paint. That's one distinction. And the frame lines are slightly different. They show slightly different than the MP.
Okay. So it's like, in a way, kind of like a subtly tweaked re-release. Slightly improved without completely changing it totally. All right.
Yeah, internally it is exactly the same as an MP. So
yeah,
except for the meter.
You'd mentioned the Amadeo lens adapters, so this is a slight tangent from that, but I received a gift from Christopher May, is a friend of the show too. He had a spare. I don't know how he had two of them, but it's a 7 Artisans Leica M to Nikon Z adapter. And I've been waxing poetic about my Z5 lately, but now I can adapt some of those nice M lenses to my my Nikon, and it's got what I like about it. It's an internal helix, so like I should be able to do a little bit of macro with it.
Yeah,
so
that's very nice. That's very nice.
It's very. I mean, it's heavy. For a tiny adapter. I mean, it's all brass. I go with a lot of the cheap Fotassi ones you can get on Amazon, and for basic adapters, they're usually fine. But this has some good weight to it.
I don't know if I want to, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but what is so bad about the cheap ones? Because I've used the cheap ones, and I know that you can spend $100.
It depends on which mount you're adapting. If you're just going like Minolta, SR mount or Nikon F mount, M42, they're so simple. It's just metal. There's nothing wrong with going with the cheap ones. But if you want to do something like the Canon FD mount that has the breech lock, the DKL mount is famous. Those are much more complicated. And if you get the cheap ones, they're just really rough.
Makes sense, because I've just done like a screw mount to Micro Four Thirds. It seems to work.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing, M42s. I mean, those are slam dunks. But when you get them that have any kind of linkage in them,
right?
Of course, absolutely.
And what Miles was saying about the Amadeo adapters, there are some really cheap adapters to put Zeiss lenses on Leica M cameras. And what they did was basically just take apart a Soviet camera and take the mount off,
right,
and adapt it. And they focus fine. The problem is they self-eject. So you're shooting with it. 1 minute you've got a camera with a lens on it. The next minute you have two separate pieces.
And is that soft aluminum, being a Soviet camera?
I don't think they use aluminum. It's just less refined brass. They just didn't get it right. It's off by a micron, but that's enough. If you're sticking all Soviet, they're all off equally, so they play well together. But you try to attach a Zeiss lens using a Soviet adapter, it's probably not going to play well. I mentioned in another episode, this isn't a lens adapting episode, but you can actually get Contax or Nikon rangefinder adapters that don't have the internal helix. It's just the external bayonet. So like, for example, I have the Nikkor 35 millimeter f2.5 lens, and I can adapt that to my Nikon Z5 because I bought the external Contax adapter, which is very simple. You don't need the helix. The Amadeos are handcrafted, custom built from scratch, all new parts. They're very, very, very well made. Paul has spoken many times about his Orion adapter he had once long ago. To get any kind of Contax rangefinder or Nikon rangefinder adapter that has the internal bayonet, very complicated. But if you have some of the telephoto or wide angles, even if you have the Nikkor 50 millimeter, the 1.1 lens, that super fast lens, about half of those lenses use the external bayonet, half use the internal bayonet. But if you have an external bayonet contacts or Nikkor lens and you want to adapt it digitally, you only need an adapter with the external bayonet. So that'll save you a ton of money.
I will say the only thing with the adapters that I've had struggles with is the M39 screw mount to Leica M. I've gone with some of the Amazon ones, and I've had troubles with the frame lines fully engaging on my M bodies. So at that point, I just started foraging for either the Voigtlander or the original Leica ones. Because then the other thing you get into is if your lens has an infinity lock, you kind of got to make sure, because I think there's at least one or two adapters that don't accommodate the infinity lock.
Well, and I've heard some of them get stuck. They'll actually get stuck on your camera.
They do get stuck. And here's a tip. And some of you probably know this. On the old Leica M rear lens caps, the rear lens caps are flat, but there are 3 nubs on the back of the caps. Those 3 nubs fit perfectly into the 3 holes that are in the adapter. So if you ever get one stuck on the body, the lens is unscrewed, the adapter is still stuck on the M body. Take that rear cap, put it on the adapter so that the nubs fit into the holes, and rotate it. It comes right out. Did anyone ever try to take a K-mount adapter or a thread decay adapter out of a stuck K body? Pentax, made the adapter to put screw mount lenses, M42 lenses on K-mount bodies.
Yes.
And the cheap bodies would almost always get stuck. When you release the K adapter, it wouldn't, and try to get it off, it wouldn't come off. So there you are with the adapter stuck in it. And those threads are razor sharp. So you stick your fingers in it, you try to turn it, and you look down, you've got bloody fingers, and they're just a mess to get them off.
While we were talking about Leicas and so on, and I mentioned obviously the Nikon autofocus earlier for a carry on camera, but since we've gone down the Leica route, my camera with a strap, I'll bring through and sort of keep it on theme, is the M2. I find this is the camera when I'm just going out to take pictures for the sake of taking pictures and not for an article for my website or anything like that. That's the one I pick up, and there's always got a strap on it, and it's a rope strap too. So I know they're divisive amongst people sometimes, but it's the camera that I really enjoy. It lets me shoot both 50 and the 30, my preferred 35. I do actually have a Zeiss Bygone 35mm on it. I tend to prefer that at 35 than the Leica lenses. Just gives it the rendering that I particularly like. So this to me is my carry everywhere camera when I go traveling. A lot of times when I just want to take pictures for the sake of taking pictures, that's the kind of camera that comes with me.
Now, have you had that one serviced, or did you just come to you in great condition?
It'd been serviced before I got it. So I haven't
just do it.
No. This was before I knew Jess. But
okay.
This hasn't skipped a beat. I use it in conjunction with my M3 a lot as well, where I stick the 50 on the M3 and the 35 on this, and then I don't have to worry about changing lenses at all either. So okay. It's actually a nice combination.
I used to have an M3.
Yeah, you sold it to get something, right? Didn't you buy
some another?
Theo, you had said that there's contentious opinions about rope straps. Do we know why that is?
I think some people think that you should have a flat one for comfort. Other people think that you should have these aren't good for ergonomics. Others just I don't know, think they may be hippie looking straps as well. So
hipsters, they're
hipsters.
Let's just go off on them now. All these people spend $120 for what's the Japanese company, Arts and Artisans or somebody like that makes a Norwegian schmooey strap that has horrible lugs on it, and they sell them for $125 to $150. Luigi in Italy is making straps that are works of art that it takes 12 years to get them soft enough that they actually will bend down It just makes me crazy. And Peak Designs, the Peak Design straps, all they are just cheap straps with a fancy connector on them, and they're outrageously expensive. Anthony is a fan of the Hyperion straps. Which they're reasonably priced.
Absolutely.
Even
their leather strap was only like €17.
Yeah, I buy cheap Hyperion straps. I mean, they're knockoffs of the Hyperions.
Yeah, no, I actually get the Hyperions. They're made in Greece as well, and as you can tell, my background's Greek, so that's a plus for me as well. But no, they're fantastic quality, and they're actually reasonably priced for the material that's being used. I agree with you, Paul. Some of these multi-$100 straps, which are basically a piece of rope, are really, really just way out there.
I think they're made they're made from the foreskin of an endangered species or something. I mean,
You had mentioned hipster and then the word hippie, so I figure this is a good segue into the hippie straps, which is a style of strap that was very, very popular with very ornate threaded, patterns. And I've accumulated quite a few over the years. Here's a nice red. It doesn't quite show up in the zoom well, but there's a nice kind of patriotic red, white, and blue one. I got kind of a cool yellow and blue looking one here with some orangish, maybe pink inlays. I got I don't know what color this is, but I have a bunch of cool colored ones. I'll stop describing them, but I got a whole fistful of straps that I've accumulated over the years. And I will say though, when I get one of these, they immediately go in the washing machine because these things are usually disgusting.
They are filthy.
They're filthy. Yeah. I mean,
did you see the picture I posted, the one with the maple leaf on it?
Yeah.
Canadian brothers and sisters. I mean, they're just awful.
Has anybody ever seen this strap before? The red Canon strap. Mm-hmm. This one's actually really nice. These were, I think someone told me that they made these for either the 84 or 88 Olympics. I don't know if that's true or not. It doesn't have an Olympic logo on it, so it's maybe not true, but it's actually really nice. It's got nice padding on it, real thick. I've actually used this attached to a camera before. I got an Agfa one that just has the Agfa logo all over it, the whole length of it. I have a new in the package Minolta, never even opened, still shrink wrapped. Yeah, I got a bunch.
Somebody gave me a box that had a number of Pentax professional straps from the 80s or 90s. And I thought, these are so cool. And I have one for my MX and one for my Spotmatic, and I put all these like deluxe, and didn't realize that the rubber backing was degrading. And I destroyed like 5 shirts that had just you couldn't bleach out the black rubber that rolled into the shirts.
I've actually seen that before. It just, you get on your hands and it's like, oh, that's disgusting.
That's my problem with leather straps. I've had brown leather straps and a white t-shirt on a hot summer day, and you have a new stripe feature on your shirt, but I never thought getting into this that I'd have actually a cool story for a strap. I always think of straps as very transient things, but I was on a business trip in Hong Kong, and I had heard about this strap company, Barton 1972. And I don't know if anybody's heard of the straps, but they make these beautiful, like, braided leather straps. And I happened to find his retail outlet, and I don't know, it was just on a Friday evening. I go up there and I meet the gentleman behind it, Andy Barton, and he's got a YouTube channel. He's a pretty interesting gentleman, but he was actually just about a week away from closing up his shop because he was just going to go fully online. But just walked me through all their options. But to this day, it's probably one of the most comfortable and also just most appealing straps. When you get something that's leather, but then it's like, you knew somebody put some quality into it and the craftsmanship and everything, it makes you confident when you wear it with whatever camera you got with it.
So I have a serious question. So for those of you who have kind of a premium leather strap like that you really do like and want to use it, but on multiple cameras, like, what is your process from moving that strap from camera to camera, or you just don't ever do it?
I don't ever do it.
You just leave it on your favorite camera and that's it?
That's it. Because I like my fingernails I want to keep
Yeah,
them.
right. Because I mean, there are some good quick release options, but they usually in some way don't match, or it looks weird or something like that, or maybe it rubs up against the camera wrong. So like that's kind of been, I don't have it handy here, but I have a couple okay straps, something that's actually very comfortable. But if I'm going to go to a place like, again, back to the zoo camera discussion, where I just want a camera dangling from my neck that is just ready to go whenever I need it to, I get annoyed with that process of unthreading through the loops and trying to get the strap off to get it onto something else. So apart from going nutso with these $125 Japanese testicle skin leather, I don't know how many people buy bunches of them, or you just like Bill said, just keep your favorite strap on your favorite camera.
I have multiple Gordy's straps. Gordy's are made in somewhere out on the West Coast, and they're very thin Latigo leather. And he'll cut them to whatever length you want. He'll put a pad on them if you want. He'll use different color stitching. And they're beautiful straps. And I think the average price is $35 to $40, but they are not interchangeable. He doesn't make any that have a quick release. So, if you're going to put one on multiple cameras, you're going to need multiple straps. And I'm with Bill. I can't, I really hate changing straps on a camera. So once I get them on, they're really on unless I have to change them.
Bill, wasn't there a guy in Canada that just like a year, maybe 3 years ago, started doing some really nice leather work straps?
Mark Rossi. I don't know what he's up to with that. There's a woman who's actually hand weaving camera straps. It's a friend of mine, Dana Case. She has a Facebook presence under Whitney Weaving, and she weaves with Tencel. I have two of her original ones, but I saw a friend of mine, a mutual friend, recently picked up a new one that it just looked gorgeous. It was like off-white and sort of like a dark gray black with sort of an orange sort of like nylon to connect to the camera, like say a regular Canon or Nikon strap, or Domkey, which is sort of my go-to. Domkey, I'm probably going to splurge and buy one or two off my friend Dana at some point. And I also recently just picked up a thin leather one from a company at Western Canada called Fieldwork. And it's English belting leather, so it's not going to disintegrate on you. But yeah, I wouldn't want to wear it with a white t-shirt in July in North America. In Australia, yeah, you can get away with it in July, no problem. But up here, in July, no. And since I'm here, the camera that has a strap on it would probably be my any one of my Nikon F2s. Like, they've been into the depths of Algonquin Park. They've been on more day trips than I can even count at this point. And I was just using one, an F2AS on Easter weekend, and I was playing around with some Atlanta Film Company Koji 125 tungsten film. Results to come down the line. And as for the little small, go anywhere camera, it'd probably have to be the Rolly 35 with the Tessar lens.
Well, real quick, Bill, before the show, the guys and I were predicting what a model that might get brought up multiple times is a favorite camera. And I thought, when I saw you being a Nikon guy, I thought you would say it. You got really close there with Nikon F2, but it wasn't the one we were thinking of. So I won't say it in case someone wants to bring it up, though. But I agree with you. The Raleigh 35 is great.
Yeah, I've got one, a couple with the Tessar and one with the Zenar lens. An interesting little conversation piece, because that one, I think, was the first one that was made in Singapore. They had a shortage of Tessar lenses, so
right,
Schneider kind of pulled up the slack.
That's what Anthony has. Anthony's is a Schneider too, and you're exactly right. They had a shortage of the Tessars, so Schneider kind of stepped up. Optically, though, there's no difference. I mean, some people will pay more for the Schneiders because they're less common. Some people will pay more for certain lenses because they think they're better, but I don't believe that they are. I would be utterly shocked if you could truly tell a difference between the Zeiss versus the Schneider Raleigh 35s. And I don't know if there's any proof of this. I'm not about to go back and listen to every episode of the show I've ever done, but I feel like my gut tells me that if there's one camera we have brought up more often on every episode of this show than any other, it's probably the Raleigh 35. That camera just seems to come up so often on this show.
But they're so darn cute.
Yeah.
But hang on, we have to clarify here. We're talking about straps on cameras, and I've got a Raleigh 35 here by chance.
Yes.
But it has a rope hand strap rather
A rope
than a
hand
neck
strap.
strap.
There you go.
Are we going? Are we allowing discussion of hand straps in this?
Yeah.
episode?
Oh, absolutely.
Any kind of strap.
Absolutely.
Strap. Yeah.
Technically, it is a
Written.
strap. You didn't
Here's-
say
here's
it's a strap
something.
to go around. It's a strap.
Here's a camera strap issue, which I don't know if this is just my own imagination, but here's a camera strap which is not just to hold the camera. This is a
It's a
middle
Minox.
50s, middle to late 50s, early 60s Wetzlar, not Riga Minox. But I've long understood that the little nubbins on here are designed to give you a for doing close-up photography, because the focus, we've got 0.2 meters, 0.24 meters, 0.3 meters. And I don't know if this is just a story that I hypothesized, but there are little nubbins here. And I've long been under the impression, I've never used it to do this, but that the theory is this is the thing that you would use if doing very close-up, photography of documents or something like that.
Yeah, they actually call them a measuring strap.
So it's not, I mean, the thought being, now you got a strap that is there holding the camera, but it's got another use as well. So,
Well, but it doesn't have, you see, there's the only thing, what's on the other end of the strap that isn't.
well,
attached
that's
to the
interesting too. This little doodad that looks to me like it's designed to go on a button.
Yes. Well, a lot of them will have a little clasp, and the clasp would be to put it into a buttonhole or something like that, so that the camera would not get lost.
Absolutely.
But those were actually, I mean, as a strap itself, they weren't terribly useful because it's nothing but really a piece of
That's true.
flexible material.
Metal braid.
Yeah, it's a
Metal.
very nicely, it's classic 1950s German mechanical engineering. It's wonderful, but it doesn't really, I agree with you, it doesn't do much as far as holding the camera.
No, if you're using your Minox for document copying, they absolutely translate to the different, like the first 4 focal lengths. So like
Makes
in the
sense.
US, it's 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, and then 20 inches. And at the end, because I shoot Minox all the time, and I always save 3 or 4 shots to take pictures of books just to show people. I mean, you can shoot text that's in 6-point type, and you use that little 8-inch measure, and it works perfectly in focus. And so, yeah, that's how it actually worked as a spy camera. That's how, if you were gonna like try to take your picture of your nuclear launch codes, you would use your first little bump there on the chain to get that accurate focus.
That was actually pretty common with that style of camera. I think the Ashika Adiron does that too.
And
there's
even the XA4 has the macro XA4 has a 1 foot focus, and the strap with that is 1 foot long, so you can get accurate macro photography with the XA4.
Absolutely.
Well, it makes sense because, you don't have any depth of field when you're up close like that. And even though if you've got a whatever this is, a 15 millimeter lens, you're really pressing things.
And it's fixed at f3.5.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Nothing but shutter speed.
Yeah. Well, Miles just ducked out, but Miles had mentioned, Paul thought that Miles was going to bring his contacts as his strapped camera. And I thought about my Contax 2A, which is probably the big rangefinder that I use more than any others. And I thought about my Super Iconta, the 6x6, which I've probably shot more in medium format in than any other camera. But actually, when I went back and looked at my stats for the last 4 years, the camera that I have put more film in, that I just like, I'm going to go shoot a rocket launch and I want a camera that will just work. It is my Contax ST, which is a camera that I'm betting that very few people here have ever even held.
I have not.
The XT was like the big brother to the Aria. So it's got like the magnesium body. It's got an incredible heft to it, yet it's also very sculptural. It's just a beautiful camera. It has full manual all the way up to program mode if you've got the lenses, but if you've got the AE lenses, it's just aperture priority or manual. and it's also a auto wind camera, so there's no manual film advance in it, which when I'm shooting wildlife or shooting rocketry, it's very handy to have. And it's a camera that doesn't get a lot, there's not a lot of buzz about it, there's not a lot of cachet about it, because people like the Aria because it was smaller, and people like the was it the AX that had the auto focusing on the film plane, so you could get stabilization off of other lenses. This doesn't have all those bells and whistles, but as a modern SLR, there's no camera that I shoot more than my Contax ST, and it always has its bright red Hyperion rope strap on it, because I think the red and the black look really good together. But yeah, that's it. It's a kind of an oddball camera. It was actually Cheyenne Morrison's the person that really talked me into this. He somehow got his hands on all of the marketing material from when the camera was launched, and the amount of technology that Contax put into this camera, it was it was stunning. And because this one's under the radar, I was able to pick up the body for under $200, and it's got the planar 50-1.7 that I picked up from the Bits and Bobs and Lotions Potions Emporium a couple of years ago. Considering that I'm so obsessed with manual SLRs, and I have just about every significant manual SLR ever manufactured, and yet this Contax is just the camera that it's my go-to.
Before we go on, we did lose Miles, but we gained somebody. Bob, welcome to the show. Bob, you were on the Mamiya episode, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I was on that one.
Did you get a chance to introduce yourself? I don't think you did on that one because we were going so quickly on that episode.
Well, that was a full one too. There was a lot of people for that one.
Yeah. You want to just say your name, where you're from?
Okay, I'm Bob St. Cyr. I'm currently in Abbotsford, British Columbia, about an hour east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada.
All right. So we have you and Bill representing the North here. So do you have a favorite camera or an interesting pile of straps that you'd like to share with us?
Well, interesting camera is the one I don't have, but I would love to have a Ghibellini 810 Ti would be the camera that I would like to have. So I like big. Ghibellini 810 Ti. Yeah.
Okay. That's a big camera then.
Yeah, I like big. So
I don't think you could put a strap on that.
Well, it has a nice leather, custom-made leather handle strap kind of thing on it. It's beautiful. Everything about it is top shelf. But anyway, that would be nice to have.
Yes,
but
for sure.
Otherwise, I have straps on most of them because I use them. Like I have, as far as the small format goes, like I'll have one in the vehicle with me and it's ready to go. And then if I'm going out, usually, sometimes I'll take a medium and then a small format, or I'll take the large and a small format with me. So, I got to have straps on them because, I'm carrying stuff, right? So it's imperative that I have that. Nothing fancy or out of the ordinary, just a good utility strap to carry the gear around.
Gotcha. Coming back to different types of straps, we were talking before the show started. There was a stylish strap that I've come across a couple of times. I'm sure some of you have too. That seems to have been popular at one time. It's like a metal rope, and it looks almost like it's like made out of a necklace material. It's extremely bendy. I'll have a picture of this, and I don't know what the official name for this type of metal. It's
called a hair puller.
A hair puller. That's where I was going with it. And it looks very cool. For it being metal, I mean, it's very, very bendy. But the design of it's made up of all these very, very tiny metal loops. And you put this around your neck, and it like Anthony said, it doubles as shaving the back of your neck. I mean, it will just rip every hair out of the back of your neck to where it's smooth as like a baby's bottom, a hairless neck after using one of these things. And I just can't imagine people use these. I mean, yet I've come across them a number of times on old cameras. They're pretty. It displays very nicely. I have it here on a nice Exacta Verax 2A. I have the metered prism and a biotar on it. So for a display piece, they're very pretty, but practically, man, I don't know how anybody could have used this, or maybe humanity has evolved or de-evolved, I should say, to where in the mid 20th century, maybe nobody had hair on the back of their necks or something.
Well, Mike, the only thing that was any less comfortable than that was the one that was barbed wire.
Barbed wire, yeah, the barbed wire strap.
I mean, those were just those straps were so diabolical that they were. And if you had a heavy camera like that Exacta with a lens on it,
yeah,
you got a 1.5 or 2 pound camera, and a quarter-inch strap. I mean, it's just not comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not pulling your hair out, it's so thin that all that weight is in like a maybe 2 to 3 millimeter wide strap, all putting pressure on one spot on your neck. You're going to have a dent in the back of your neck after you're done shooting it for 5 minutes. So yeah, there's been some diabolical straps over the years.
So hang on, what the barbed wire strap? I've never heard of that one.
It was it was a subset. I mean, it was primarily by a certain BDSM crowd. Photographers that came out with them. Probably not something you're familiar with, Theo.
Okay, I think that discussion of BDSM straps kind of kicked Mike off. So
the nanny chip kicked in.
So we do have lost Mike, hopefully temporarily. Who's got another camera that they want to sort of bring up? Mark.
Yeah, so this currently on a strap, I've got my Bessa R2A, and typically I'll have like my Pen F or the ME Super on a strap, but this one I'm trying to get to learn it more and use it, and I'm really enjoying this camera. I've had it for a couple of years, haven't shot it much, but I'm really starting to enjoy learning the ins and outs, the little quirks of this camera. And yeah, the strap is just a little cheapy rope one from Amazon that I kind of hung off the ceiling to make sure that it was strong enough to not break with the camera use, and so far seems to be fine.
Is that one of the snapshot scopars, like the wide angle Voigtlander lenses that?
Yeah, it's a 35 millimeter f2.5, and then I found this sort of like 3D printed nylon hood for it.
Oh, the 35-25 scopar is just beautiful glass.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying it. It's great for like when I used to work in downtown DC, and now I'm a little further out, so I don't get as much of a chance to do any walkarounds anymore. But when I do, this is my new go-to.
Yeah, I got a strap I can show you on my Plaubel. The Plaubel hangs funny. It hangs vertically. But these straps, a buddy of mine, long story, but a buddy of mine passed away a couple of years ago, and I bought all of his cameras from his family to sell them for him. But this camera is it's a secure strap. And what that basically means is that there are strands of metal woven through the fabric. So if you're in a city or something, a big deal with for pickpockets is to come with a box cutter, cut your strap off, grab the camera and run. Well, they're not going to get very far with these because it's very high strength steel woven through. Now they could get this part of it, but if they try to cut it anywhere else, it isn't going to cut.
They're probably going to reach for the middle of it. They're not going to cut it right next to the body.
Yeah, they're going to try to get it the most convenient place to get a hold of it. And they're actually pretty nice straps. I normally don't like a real wide strap like that, but that camera is relatively heavy, so it's good.
Well, earlier in the show, I hinted at a camera that would become, or could become, I should say, a camera with a strap, because it does something that most cameras cannot. It's a very special purpose camera that's very easy to use.
Oh, please tell me it's a Minolta talker.
It is not. I have here a Zeiss Hologon ultra wide.
Goodness.
So this has a trigger, a handheld trigger for remote shutter release. And Paul explained it to me so the lens is a 15 millimeter f8, 3-element Zeiss Hologon. I'll have pictures of this, but if you look at how thin the camera is. The lens is basically contained within the inside of the body. The body is, I believe, the Contarex body, but there's no mirror. There's no through the layering. The viewfinder is just a scale focus. You look through it and you see a 15 millimeter field of view. But because the lens is so wide and it's so close to the body that any attempt to hold the camera like you would a normal camera, you'll get your fingers in the shot. So the proper way to use this is with this handheld trigger below it with a button for firing the shutter, and it just connected with a simple shutter release. You can shoot it without it. I mean, there is a normal shutter release on top. I can fire the camera and whatnot. But what I like about this is, for as strange and rare of a camera as this is, it's focus free. You have one aperture. You can change shutter speeds. It's got a selection of 1 second up to 500 plus bulb. No metering, no electronics of any kind. And you literally just point up to it. And I think the minimum focus on this thing is like 2 feet. So basically everything from 2 feet to infinity is always in focus. You don't have to focus. You don't worry about exposure. Load in a versatile film, go outside and just start firing away. And I realize that this isn't something that a lot of people are going to have access to. But when you have these really wide angle lenses, just having that incredible depth of field and being able to walk around and just take pictures of stuff. And what I like about extreme wide angle, ultra wide angle lenses is they have a tendency to take just mundane things and give a completely different look to them. I find when I review many cameras for my website, I end up going to the same places to take, test photos of it. From an artistic standpoint, it can sometimes get a little boring. I'm doing some of the same test shots over and over and over again. Sometimes maybe the lighting is a little bit different or whatnot. But I've found with this thing that I can go to a place I've been before and get an image, but it looks so totally different because I'm fitting so much more into the field of view that I don't normally get with even a normal wide angle lens.
Well, that was interesting because it is indeed a 3-element lens. The finder is a 7-element finder.
Yeah. The finder is more complicated than lenses. Somehow, somebody at Zeiss, who knows who did it, I'll do more research because I am going to review this camera. Somebody figured out you could get really good, extremely wide angle 15 millimeter images with only 3 elements. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And that's how, I'm not kidding when I say, for those of you at home, try to picture a normal SLR body. So picture the thickness from front to back. The lens is about halfway into the body. So when I open up the film gate, I don't want to do it now because I do have film in here. But the lens is like 1/10 of an inch, 2-3 millimeters away from the film plane. Yet it works.
Mike, that camera is so valuable that if you're going to carry it, you don't need a strap. You need a holster with a 6-hour
holster. Yeah, a handcuffs. Like the old, suitcase, briefcase. I'll be handcuffed to myself.
And if you're at all portly, you want to lean forward when you shoot with it.
Oh, because it'll get your belly in.
You will. Or if you have big feet, you'll get your shoes in.
Big feet, yeah.
Do you happen to know, is it true that they made that lens in a Leica M mount, or is that a rumor?
I know somebody who has one.
Oh, okay.
I believe there was either a conversion that you could get for that, and I want to say it was that lens, but it's somebody I know who uses it quite regularly. I know his Instagram, and I'm in Detroit. He's in the Detroit area, but I think it is that lens, or it's the 15 or 16 millimeter, but it is a hologon.
I just Googled it. It's a 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
F8. It is M mount modified. Hamish from 35mmC has a review of it. I can tell just by looking at it, it's clearly a different formula than this one is here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it is about as narrow, though, probably. He's got a picture of it mounted to an M3, and a good portion of the glass is inside of the lens mount.
Because I remember back in the day, it was sort of rumored or they were going to do it. So apparently they did. If someone's got one, they did. But obviously it was a very rare item.
I had the chance to buy it off of the gentleman I know, Andy, who has one, and I last minute turned it down, and I regret it.
Yeah, I don't know that on one hand, it's not practical because the images it produces are so distinct that it's not going to work for like typical things you want to take a look of. It applies its look to everything you shoot. But on the other hand, if you're in a like stagnant, like sometimes I kind of feel like I'm constantly shooting the same scenes over and over again. It definitely does breathe a breath of fresh air into the same old scenes because they're just going to look totally different. And it's not a fisheye, you're going to get full coverage. I forget the optical term, but when a fisheye rectilinear, there you go. It's a rectilinear lens. So you're still going to get straight lines. It'll screw up your horizon, but like if there's a sidewalk or something, it's going to extend out to the corners. So, and there's even a bubble level on the top of it to make sure like it only goes forward and backwards. It doesn't do side to side. But that's a fun one.
Thinking back to the Mamiyas again, I know you can appreciate the weight of a C330, and so I was figuring a way to carry that. And I did have this optic made in the United States of America, and I found this to be an amazing, amazing camera strap with the design of it. I don't know if you can see that. It just worked really, really well to carry that without putting a lot of pressure on the neck. I found it to be a really good strap. I don't know if you still have optic there. Do they still make
they're
straps?
still around, Bob. They
Okay.
That one is actually the pro strap because it's contoured.
It's beautiful. Like that's can be a heavy camera to carry around for a long time, but this guy really made the difference. If you get a good strap, it really does make a difference.
They made them for Mamiya RBs and also Hasselblad and various other medium format cameras with the connectors that fit into the camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are flexible. They're stretch. I always call them foam, but they're not foam. They're a high density type material that does it has some give to it, so they're very comfortable to carry.
When it comes to cameras with a strap, my cameras that get a strap, it's more of a privilege than it is a right for my cameras, and so the ones I don't shoot as often may not have a strap, and I bag them and take them out when I'm ready to shoot, but. So I wasn't sure on this camera whether I wanted to honor it with a strap yet, but a couple months ago I picked up from Pro Camera, Ryan at Pro Camera. He had this Nikka 3L that he had sent off to get repainted by a gentleman, I think in South America. Did a fantastic job giving it kind of a unique finish, but there's a couple things I like about this that I love thread mount cameras, but I like this because, a couple of things on the shutter dial, you're not lifting it up to turn it. You're pushing it down to turn it. And I find that a lot more natural.
I agree. I like that too.
When I'm using it. Yeah. And then I even think the motion is somewhat natural for the film advance. Even though it does kind of protrude a little bit. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Did he upgrade that with titanium curtains?
This was before he got on the titanium kick. So
we've been noticing he's doing that to everything now.
I'm just waiting for a titanium curtain leaf shutter camera. Yeah.
That's cool. Can you get us some pictures of that one? I've never seen a black.
Yeah.
It's a 3L.
It's a 3L. The gentleman,
Enzo Patagonian.
Yeah, exactly. He had Enzo do it.
Okay.
And when he sent me some pictures when it was getting repainted, I messaged him quick. I was like, "Can I get first dibs?" He's like, "You got it."
I mean, from what I can see on the zoom window, it looks like a nice glossy paint finish.
Yeah, it definitely came out pretty well.
Yeah, very cool.
I used to have a strong opinion about repainted cameras and things that maybe weren't originally, but I don't know. It came out slick, and the way that body is designed, it already is kind of very minimalistic, and it fits it well.
I had an idea for a future show to do like a strong opinions episode where we kind of brought up a bunch of things that people in the film community have strong opinions on, and repainted cameras like that I think is one of them because I hear that discussion all the time. And personally, I'm all for it. I think I've seen so many really good aftermarket paint jobs. Alan Starkey in the UK does a lot of repaints, and he does a great job. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, but I've seen him repaint a whole bunch of Minolta SRT cameras in like bright red, pink, yellow, and it looks neat. I mean, no, it's not original, but I mean, come on, let's be honest. I mean, these are cameras. These things are designed to make images, and if somebody's going to change the color of it and do a good job of it, again, yes, it's got to be well done. But with a good paint job, I see. To me, that's not going to make me angry. It's not going to make me angry if somebody takes a 67 puke yellow Mustang and repaints it, midnight blue, or something. I think that looks cool, so I like it when people, give nice repaints like your Nika, Alex. That's really neat.
I like the Kievs that have been repainted in the Ukrainian folk art style.
Yeah, like the Matryoshka doll. Yeah.
There's a guy in Melbourne. I think his name's Mark Griswold, who he might be actually a good guest for the show one day. He actually not only just repaints them, he actually goes down some futuristic enamels and finishes as well, which if you really think about it, these are getting old, some of these cameras. This breathes a new life into them sometimes, and probably adds another 50, 60 years to them.
I agree.
And you're not trying to fool anybody. I mean, it is what it is, and you're making it, you're personalizing it. I got no problem with that.
So we're coming up near the end of the show. There is one more strap discussion though that I wanted to ask you guys how you guys handle this. Is a lot of mid-century, late 60s cameras didn't have strap lugs. And the only way to use a strap on them is if you have the original Ever-Ready case, which, as we've probably all witnessed, it isn't always feasible. These cases are old. They might be in poor condition. Sometimes they smell horrible. But even if they're in nice cosmetics, I don't trust a 50-year-old piece of leather. I've actually seen them break very easily. So for those of you who are shooting a camera that doesn't even have strap lugs, and you don't have the original case, you don't want to use it, what's your solution? Just don't do it? Or has anybody ever tried the tripod socket thing?
I was just going to say that the 1960s Voigtlanders are notorious for not having camera strap attachments. They don't have lugs. They were meant to be used with the Ever-Ready case. So I keep a number of wrist straps on those tripod lugs. They work fantastic.
I once had a wife who was carrying my Bronica with a strap screwed into the tripod socket when it came loose, and it went down a flight of concrete stairs. About 2/3 of the way down, the waist level finder opened, and the next landing was on top of the waist level finder, which crushed it. And that was the last time I've used a strap in a tripod socket.
That's quite a heavy camera, Paul, because I tend to use them on the more, like the folders, like Anthony mentioned, the folders or the small compact cameras with a wrist strap.
Yeah, the problem was that Bronica at that time used a proprietary connector, and I didn't have the strap.
Right.
So the only option was a wrist strap that went into the tripod socket. Nowadays, you've got the Black Rapids and the various other straps that also use a single connector, but they're a lot more secure.
Did you say that was a previous wife, or did?
Yeah.
Is
yes.
that?
It had nothing to do with it.
So besides Anthony, can somebody name a 35 millimeter camera with removable strap lugs? Can anybody think of one?
Good question.
Ooh.
All right, Anthony.
The Ansco Mark M.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Ricoh made this camera. This is called the Ansco Mark M. And there is actually one other Ricoh camera that uses the same system, but the strap lugs are actually removable. They have a half, it's like a circle, and one half of it's red, one half of it's blue, and you rotate it. And when it's pointing to the blue side, it's secure to the camera. When it's pointing to the red, or I think it's the other way around. I might have it backwards because I don't have mine connected. But one way it's connected to the body, you rotate it the opposite direction, you could pop the thing out. And it's harder than it sounds. It's not going to come accidentally. But I guess their thinking was that you might be able to swap or something. I don't really know the logic behind it, but it's kind of one of those neat features that somebody thought up once before. And I don't know that it ever really caught on. But to my knowledge, this one is the only camera And it's just a really cool camera. We've talked about this one before. It's a Raymond Lowry camera, very, very distinct. Looks like a car, an American automobile car. Even the exposure counter kind of looks like something you'd see on an automobile dashboard. But it has removable strap lugs.
I just shot a roll through mine last week, and it's such a cool camera. It weighs a ton.
Sure.
It looks a bit like an old hi-fi console, but for and it's got the most crazy array of frame lines in the finder. But
they're color coded.
Yep, color coded. But what I do not understand about that camera, for all of its crazy high design, the lens, every single lens, it doesn't matter whether it's the 35, the 50, or the 100, the longer lens. I don't think it's 135.
So.
They all protrude into about a third of the viewfinder. You'd think that one of the lenses wouldn't, but they all do.
Yeah.
Did they make an auxiliary finder?
It's got a hot shoe, so I mean, you probably could mount one, but I don't think they made an official one.
I just never had a camera where there wasn't a single lens that it didn't knock out like a third of the viewfinder.
I'm looking. I wouldn't quite say a third, but it's definitely a good portion of it.
Oh, put the other two lenses on there, and it's a third.
That's true. I have the 1.9 currently. By far, though, the worst offender of that is the Yashica Lynx 14. That lens covers like half the viewfinder.
I've got a since we talked about lugs, I've got a question on that. I've purposely not mentioned because I've mentioned in so many other episodes. I'm not going to go down that path now. The Mamiya 7, that's one I've got the strap on every time. I think everyone knows that's my favorite camera, and that's always going to have a strap on it. But the one thing that does actually annoy me a little bit is the lug on my model. The lugs are actually on the side. They're not from left and right. They're all on the one side. So the camera hangs in portrait mode when you put it around your neck. There's a few cameras that have done that, but it annoys the crap out of me because it's not convenient. And then when you hold it up, the straps actually sort of rubs against your nose and things like that. What do people think about cameras that went down that path of actually having the lugs on the side?
Didn't the Leica M5 do that?
Correct.
There were two versions of the M5. There's a 2-lug and a 3-lug.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could choose on 3-lug?
Yeah. But the Plaubel that I showed a picture of earlier, it's like that, Theo. It's on one edge. And I'm used to it. Actually, if I carry it over my shoulder, it's more convenient, I think, than it is the other way. But what you're saying is, you're right. I mean, it's not comfortable when you're shooting with it.
Yeah.
No.
It's not so bad to carry it, but it's not very good when you're bringing it up to your eye.
There's a fairly uncommon Soviet camera called the Lomo Voskhod, which has the strap lugs on one side. And it's kind of it's a full frame 35mm camera, but it's almost built to be used exclusively in portrait orientation. So you have the strap lugs on one side, it kind of hangs straight down. Even the way the viewfinder is and where the shutter release is, it's very natural to just hold the camera up to your eye in portrait. You could still use it landscape as well, but that's another camera where I think they were kind of experimenting with what if we made a camera that was meant to hang the other way. I don't know that there's a practical benefit other than making portrait shots easier, but I don't know. One more regarding tripod sockets. Anthony, your camera that you have yet to replace is the AGAT 18 and the 18K. That's a camera which the strap that it came with is actually screwed into the strap to the tripod socket already. So like you may not realize that camera even has a tripod socket because it's not obvious that the strap comes off, but you can actually just unscrew it.
On one hand, I never realized that. On the other hand, that's the last camera I would ever put on a tripod.
It's like it weighs like 100 grams. It's all plastic. It feels like a toy. We've talked about it before, but the AGAT, whatever, for how cheap it feels and looks, it actually makes really nice images. All right. I think it's a good time to kind of wind down. One thing I did want to point out, a bit of an errata from the digital episode. There was one thing that I messed up on. We were talking about the sensors, and I had mentioned how we were talking about Fuji with the Super CCD. And I had said that they had added a fourth color, and I actually had that backwards. Fuji didn't add a color. It was Sony who did that. So the DSC F828, that camera that you could do the infrared with the magnet, their sensor had a fourth color, which supposedly made more accurate colors. But Fuji changed the arrangement of the pixels and made some larger than others to help emphasize certain colors over something else. I don't have the technical understanding of what they did differently, but I said that wrong. The topic of CCD versus CMOS sensors seemed to strike a nerve with quite a few people, as it always seems to have. We had commented on it. Some people feel as though the CCD sensors have better color than the CMOSs do. Some people disprove that. Other people swear by it. It's still a contentious topic that I think will ever go away. Certainly, whatever technical difference there might be between the two sensors, I'm sure you could compensate for in post-processing, especially with RAW. So it's probably a moot point. And then there was another point. I think we didn't get it wrong, but we didn't explain it fully. But CCD sensors were almost exclusively APS-C crop sensor sensors. There were only two exceptions to that. And it was Paul, what was his name? Paul Chamber had pointed out that only the Leica M9 and the Contax N digital SLR are the only two full frame SLR digital cameras that had a CCD sensor. So Paul, hopefully you're listening to this episode. I fixed it for you there. So that's my errata from the last episode. But
Mike, we had so many brittle comments about that digital show. I think we need to tread lightly before we reintroduce more digital cameras into the topic stream.
In our defense, though, from the very beginning of that show, we flat out admitted this was out of our element. So I think we did pretty good. The feedback, you're right. We have gotten a lot of contentious comments, brittle comments. Overall, though, I thought the feedback was pretty positive. That show, as the last few episodes of this podcast has done really, really well. Paul, Anthony, Theo, and I, we talk often throughout the week, when we're not recording, and we're always blown away by the feedback you guys give us. So we really do appreciate all the feedback. We love all the new listeners. For the first, 20, 30 episodes of this show, we were getting a lot of engagement on Facebook, which we still are, but we're starting to see people commenting that have joined us, found us through other channels, people that aren't on Facebook. Paul, wasn't one of our episodes, the Wes Loader episode, mentioned in a prominent collectors group?
Yeah, the Photographic Society of New England, FSNY, gave a shout out to Wes and the podcast. It was one of the earlier episodes. So I want to get those guys, make them aware of what we're doing today.
But I just wanted to say thanks. Bill's still here. Mark, Patrick, Alex are the only ones left. Everybody else has dropped off. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to ask or say before you go?
Wish me luck. I got a pinhole camera as a gift recently. It would be my first foray into doing a pinhole, so I'm looking forward to it.
A real man would hand hold that, I think.
Oh, the camera we thought was going to come up a whole bunch, and not a single person has said it is either the FM2 or the FM3. So when I saw Bill had joined, I thought for sure he would mention that. But we've had a couple episodes where those two cameras come up. I know Hong is a huge fan of the FM3. A couple other people have mentioned that that's one of their favorites. So it looks like Mark might be going to get one. But we had really thought that the FM2s would come up as a popular camera.
Well, in my defense, I do own a couple of them and an FM3, but I just find I've been reaching for the F2 of late because of it's a system camera, so you can kind of pimp it out your way with, focusing screens, diopters if you need them. I need them for farsightedness. And again, it's like you can pretty much use any lens on it. And you can use them in stop down if you're in a pinch. Whereas you can't do that with an FM3 or an FM2 for that matter. Bad things will happen if you put a pre-AI lens on. That'll end in tears and regret.
Well, thanks you guys for coming. As always, we really appreciate you guys for joining us, helping steer the discussions. Honest to God, even though we call this cameras with a strap, I never imagined we would spend as much time talking about actual straps. I thought that added an element of spontaneity and kind of made the episode go in directions we hadn't planned, which I love.
It's called nerdiness.
We are the nerdiest film photography podcast, and now we love our straps. We haven't quite yet decided on a topic for the next show, but we have been having an itch for a Konica episode. I've been wanting to do a Yashica episode. We've heard a lot of people asking about something regarding half frames. People have asked about panoramics. There's so many topics. Don't know what it's going to be, but we'll certainly let you all know when we have the next show announcement, which is usually posted a couple days before the show.
If you're going to do Konica, would Connie Omega count?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to do 2 hours about my Contax ST.
The Contax SD, yeah. Half frames. All right. Mark Faulkner's voting for half frames. Yes. We do need to explore Zeiss a little bit more, but the problem with Zeiss is we could do a dozen episodes devoted to Zeiss and still not cover everything. Maybe I'll use that to talk more about my Hologon.
And I still want to do a Kodak show.
We want to do a Kodak show. We want to get Todd Gustafson.
Absolutely.
We had Todd Gustafson on one of the episodes before. He's one of the curators at the George Eastman House. We'd love to get him back. We've had Robert Schaenbrook on a couple times. There's just so much, we've done. This is the 47th episode, and I feel like there's just still so many things we could cover. So stay tuned. All right, everybody, have a good night. Thank you for coming.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. I think that discussion of BDSM straps kind of kicked Mike off. So
the nanny chip kicked in.
So we do have lost Mike, hopefully temporarily.
Mike says he got kicked out. Are we still there? And I'm going to say, screw you.
I'm back. I got kicked out.
Screw you.
We didn't know we triggered the safe word.
The NSA is everywhere.
Screw you.